What's up, Knicks fans? I know it's been a while since the last time we talked, and we're mourning right now. But like always, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to throw it over to my brother Phil. Philip, talk to the people and help us out on this sad day.
You know, man, I'm just sitting here wallowing in my sorrows right now. I'm watching this Lakers and Nuggets game, and I'm thinking, man, if it would be such a beautiful thing to watch my Knicks play tomorrow night. And then I have to remind myself that I can't. So it's hard. It's sad, but I got my brothers here. We got some friends with us tonight. So watch the intro, come to our pity party, and let's enjoy the rest of this show.
I mean, how the heck am I supposed to do it? How you doing after the both of you just made me so sad? Hit the intro, Hector.
Good morning, Knicks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Knicks Morning Brew. I'm your guy Hector, like I said, joined by my brothers, Mr. Philip Porto and Jiggaman Porto. And I know this is a pre-recorded episode. We're not live right now, so I'm a little bit off my game. I literally, once I click intro, I went right to the comment section, and I realized, hey, we ain't got no comment section. I don't got to get ready to do a roll call.
No, I got you, bro. I got you. Oh, what up? I see so-and-so in the chat.
Yeah, I see you guys. I see you guys. All my guys in the chat, how you doing? Spanky the like button for your boys. Philip.
Guys.
Yeah. No one's in the chat. None of our guys are in the playoffs. Like, it's just, one thing after another. I just really wish that I had someone here to just cuddle me and help my woes. My wife gave me sympathy for about a day, and then it was like, all right, pep up, get over it. And so it is what it is. I thank her for that support. She really was supportive. She knew how heartbroken I was, but it was Mother's Day weekend, so I couldn't make it about, our Knicks dropping the ball and not about her. So I kind of had to tough it out and have a good weekend. So my wife just came in right now to reprimand me.
Well, I was gonna say it low-key looked like I'm low-key waiting for like both the Undertaker and like Paul Bearer to pop up in his background because it's all dark over there. Look, he gets a little hug right there. Yeah, thank you so much.
She straight up she was watching apparently on her phone upstairs, so she came down to give me a hug.
You guys sound so depressed. Everybody's so sad. Guys, what the funny part is, we literally didn't do a show on Monday, and we're not people that are going to lie. Look, we all discussed it. It was Sunday. We were like, nah, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to do it. We're going to save it. So we went ghost from any Knicks content, but I figured today's a really good day because we got our boy JD, Knicks Fan TV, joining us on the panel so he can share his woes with us as well. JD, what it do?
Oh man,
yeah, we feel it, bro. Just know that at an AA meeting, the first thing you got to do is admit what you're feeling, right? So we have to admit what we're feeling right now, and we all are having a little gut punch at the moment. But go ahead, JD.
Yeah, man, it's tough. It's tough because it was a full season and it was a great season, and you saw the potential. And when you're this close, and you can feel the moment and you can feel what's next. We're always looking ahead and, thinking about the Eastern Conference Finals and then the path. I think that's what makes it more emotional is the path. Knowing that, man, we were close. We could have been closer. And so that's why it's tough. And then you put in a lot of work. You guys put in a lot of work. Everyone involved has put in a lot of work during the season, and you never want it to end. But, all things get better, and hopefully the team improves, and next season we're at it again.
Yeah, facts. I mean, I'll start with this, guys. Does it hurt a little bit more to you guys because we literally can sit there and pinpoint throughout that series where we beat ourselves, that if we made this one little adjustment or this one just play without being dumb and settling for that 3-point shot, like knowing that we really could have had that series, to me, burns that much more. Because it wasn't like we got murdered or spanked besides that one game. The other ones, I really felt like we dropped the ball big time. So I think that's why it hurt so bad. I'll throw it to you first, Heck. What do you think?
Well, low key, I hate Gleyber Torres for the way he plays baseball. I got the Yankee game going on right next to me right now. Jesus Christ, show some hustle, Gleyber Torres. But anyway, like you were saying, I agree. I don't feel that we were outclassed in this series. Besides that one game that I showed up at Rucker Park and it was a bloodbath at halftime and we all left. But besides that one game, we was neck and neck with the Heat, and I think Knicks fans, like JD said, it was a great season. You know, no one had us pick where we was going to be at. And I'm not trying to be devil's advocate, trying to find the silver lining or anything. I'm just trying to be real. And you got to take a step back, see this season for what it was. We came into this season with very low expectations. This team far exceeded our expectations. Were there a few things that we wanted them to pick up on and maybe we could still be in the playoffs right now? Absolutely. Does the NBA make me sick to my stomach when they come out on Twitter saying that the last 2 minutes there was about 5 calls that should have went the Knicks' way? Absolutely. My diabetes and my ADHD is going crazy right now, right? But when it comes down to it, the season, it is what it is. I appreciate everybody on this team, every single one of them, the coaching staff, the front office. This is a rarity for us. Like we was talking backstage, normally around this time, we're doing deep dive videos on draft picks, on who the next to get or who are we going to move up to try to get in the draft. But it's this is a rare feeling for us right now. We don't know what to do with the off season, but hopefully these boys just get back into the gym and they come back better.
Yeah.
How about you, Philly?
And you know, before I throw it to JD, you know, like for me, I have mixed feelings. You know, like of course you look at playoffs and you're like, man, we weren't even playing at our best, and we were still in. So that's a bit frustrating, you know, to be able to be like, man, if there was just 1-2 changes that Thibodeau might have made during the game, or if there was one little bit of hustle from this player, no names, but you know what I'm talking about. If there was just that in those games, it would be a game changer, you know? And so the frustrating part as, you know, a Knicks fan and a Knicks content creator is that you open up your Twitter page, you know, during the game, and everything you're feeling, you see that same thought from hundreds and hundreds of Knicks fans. And you're just like, if all of us saw it and felt that way, how did our coach not, you know, or something to that measure, you know? So it's those little frustrating things where you're just like, man, we could have. But then at the end, I have to go, holy cow, how many losing seasons have I supported this Knicks organization? I have a freaking Courtney Lee jersey, you know, like at least it's not that, you know, it's not. Yeah, exactly. You know, like I'm that loyal, unfortunately, you know, so it's like, at least it wasn't that season. At least we could say we got Jalen Brunson, who's the best, you know, off, you know, season, like trade that we've ever, signing that we've ever gotten. Signing that we've gotten, and that Josh Hart acquisition was good for us. I just feel like there were things that we left on the table, and that's always the worst way to leave a hand, is not playing all your cards, but walking away knowing you had that ace in your pocket. That's freaking frustrating.
Go ahead, JD.
For me, you know, on the frustrating part, I think the first thing that comes to mind is and that's what makes it, the emotions after it, so much more just heartbreaking, is it's like, you know, when you feel, you know, that you lost to someone that you think you were better than, right? Like whatever you guys are best at in terms of sports, right? If it's baseball, pitching, like whatever it is, it's like imagining someone that you think you're better than just beating you. Like how would you feel after that? You would be like, wait, what went wrong? Right. So I think the first thing is that, and going into the series, a lot of people had the Knicks, you know, as the team that should win, but everybody was warning about the coaching, and then the Jimmy and Spo combination was the tricky part of it. But after that, everyone was like, oh, I'm confident the Knicks are going to beat the Heat.
Yeah.
You know, remember, this is the first series. It's very rare that a 5 seed in the second round is hosting that series in the Eastern Conference semifinal. Very rare. So that's one. The other thing is, you know, it is, and Phil attributed some to that, is I just thought that, you know, the coaching could have been much better. I didn't think the head coach had his best playoff series, and it's frustrating because I think a lot of it was pretty simple adjustments that could have been made, but nevertheless, you know, hey, you put Grant, like, you know, the big picture is it was a great year. So it's frustrating in the moment, but the totality of it is it was a great year. I still look at it differently than most people, because I think about that performance. If our expectations were higher, that performance has the front office making changes. However, for us, because of where we were at, because of our trajectory, because of our preseason expectations, that won't happen, and that is not going to get talked about. But as you look around the NBA, Doc Rivers, Monty Williams, you look around Budenholzer, changes were made and those teams didn't look at, well, we had a great year. We were the number 1 seed. Oh, we had a great year. We were up 3-2 against the Celtics. We should have beat them in Philly. No, it's about the end result. So expectations sometimes
great point.
do dictate evaluations. And I think that's what's going to happen here. And I'll end it with this on the positive side. What makes me very optimistic is, on top of it all, sometimes even in a heartbreak season, you learn one thing that is so dynamic for you that in the end, as the offseason goes on and things calm down and the smoke clears, you look at it and you're like, wow, like we really are about to potentially become a year in and year out contender. And the way that you do that is when you identify that you have a star on your team. And go into the season, even if we would have had this type of season, but Jalen Brunson would not have arrived the way that he did, I don't know how we would feel about the season, because we would still be saying, do we need really have a star? Do we have a solid point guard, but he's not going to really move the needle. You know, like Trae Young is still better than him. This guy is still better than him. Like the way that Jalen Brunson was talked about after the contract, that's what I thought I was getting. I thought I was getting a very steady, solid point guard, nothing too crazy, not maybe an all-star type, but not quite. But we got a star. Now, we can debate whether it's superstar or what type of star, but we have someone that at the very least, when the playoffs start, he's one of the best players in the NBA. And when I say that, remember, in the season, he might not be, but it's sort of like Jimmy Butler. Is Jimmy Butler really one of the best players in the NBA during the season? Not really.
No.
He's very good. But what happens in the playoffs? You have those, you know, he's had that Derek Jeter comparison and stuff. Like, these players that play very well during the season, but when the playoff comes, when money time comes, they elevate towards those other players that that get talked about as better than them. So the Knicks, the number one thing that's promising is that you came out of this season knowing we have a cornerstone that now we have to really think about putting pieces with to become now a perennial contender in the NBA.
That's good.
Also, too, whose contract is not crazy. He doesn't have one of those crazy supermax contracts getting paid $35-40 million a season. He's at $26 million right now. It goes up to about like 28, but it's not one of these crazy contracts that you look at Portland and Dame Lillard's making $50 million, right? Whatever James Harden was making in Philly before, most likely he's going to opt out and go back to Houston. So that's another key point right there. Go ahead, Sos.
Yeah.
I know Philly has some.
Oh,
yeah. And so those are great points, you know, JD. Like, I think I was one of the few who expected a lot more than most people did from Jalen Brunson, just from the fact that, like, I loved watching Jalen Brunson last year. And I spent a lot of time, like, watching him. But your first point of a lot of other organizations would be making changes right now. And because of the way things are structured, because of the friendships and stuff like that, those are topics that might not be getting discussed within our front office. And so the scary thing for me is this is something that we've wanted for a long time. The kind of star that you build around. I would hate for us to get to a point where we have, in a few years, people having the same conversations we've had about previous stars and how we have failed to build the right team around them. We just kept the players that were there or decent players around them, but we really didn't give them the full focus and attention that we needed to. You can argue that with Melo, when you look at some of the teams that he's got, he's like, oh, so we got guys that used to be stars whose legs barely work. Awesome. Great job to build around the best player that we've had in years. Let's not repeat that now with Jalen Brunson. Let's not look at the injured reserve list and be like, who can we bring here? So I'm hoping that we see something and that the front office sees it as well when it comes to what we need to now do, since Jalen Brunson has identified himself as a piece that you want to build around.
Yeah, look, there's a lot that we can segue off of just JD's comments alone, and you too, Phil. Like the fact that we're talking about the organization. Let's be real. Everybody went to the season begging for Tibbs to be fired, right? we know the history, right? Then everybody was calling it. Yeah, right. Nonstop. Then we saw the 9-man rotation change and everybody started throwing up a little bit of flowers. Okay. Tibbs did what he could with the pieces he had. I've said a million times, he fails forward. He was put into these situations due to injury. He had no choice but to start certain people, whatever. But we made sure on this channel, same thing with Knicks Fan TV, we throw the flowers where flowers are due. But here's where my issue is right now with Tibbs, guys. And I hate to harp on the last game, but it's the very first time out that he takes, and we see Randle sitting down. We see RJ Barrett sitting down after we're on a streak. We're hitting on all cylinders. We are walking into that game with the, oh my God, we're coming back to New York. Forget everything else for the season. If you put a gun to my head and ask me, do you fire Tibbs? I reference that situation right there because that's the moment that the momentum was killed every which way. So I'm not going to ask you guys if you're on the fire Tibbs train. I don't love doing that. But do we feel that this organization does need to make some adjustments? Because I'm sorry, if any of us can sit here and say Spo didn't out coach us, then I don't know what we were watching.
No,
go ahead.
Listen, my thing with Tibbs has always been, I root. He's the coach, so I root for him to do well. It's tough. It's a tough thing with Tibbs because he does have the New York roots. He is attached to the city. He's connected to the city,
right?
And the guy is a passionate coach. He's a hard worker. That's the one thing about him. He wants to do well. This is his dream job, and he wants to succeed here. So I root for him. With all that said, I've always questioned if, in the grand scheme of things, his coaching style and money time, because it's funny, we like to evaluate players in big spots, and I always say, why can't we do that with the coach too? Is it because they're 30 years older than the players? Like, is it because Tibbs is Facts. Like this senior citizen and all this other experience? Like, we don't, and the other thing too is like how we like to talk about when players are shook, or when players are a little nervous, or when players have, are a little tight in certain possessions. You don't think JB Bickerstaff went through that in the first round? You don't think that even veteran coaches go through that? Like, I thought there were moments where Tibbs panicked a little bit, and Tibbs was a little bit tight in certain situations. He panicked when he relied too much on Josh Hart and didn't go back immediately to Quentin Grimes in the starting lineup. Like, asking a player that is going through his first playoff experience, you're asking him in the middle of a series against all opponents, Spo and Jimmy, you're asking this first-time playoff player to adapt to being a bench role player and be effective in the same series at the same time. That's tough when that same player was a starter for most of the season. And all of a sudden, now you're asking him to come off the bench for 15, 20 minutes and adapt to that. Did you think that was going to go right? That was not a recipe for success. So that's number one. Number two for me with Tibbs is, I don't know that I just don't know that his strategy wins in the big spots. And here's the thing with Tibbs. I've always said, because of the players that he endorses, I don't think Tibbs would ever get fired in the middle of a season per se, because players that he likes play hard. So you know how a lot of people like to say players, they play hard for Tibbs, but people don't like to give credit the other way around, in that Tibbs also likes players that play hard, period. Like, you mean to tell me that Deuce McBride wouldn't play hard if Tibbs is not here? You mean to tell me that Quentin Grimes wouldn't play hard if Tibbs is not here? You mean to tell me that Josh Hart, who they got him for that very reason, wouldn't play hard because Tibbs is not here? So Tibbs, it's a weird thing, because the personnel that he attracts is a personnel that's not going to give up in the middle of the season. That's why, to me, if he ever does go, it'll be like a Monty Williams, a Budenholzer, a Doc Rivers. It would be at the conclusion of a season. We did not meet expectations, and then you decide to move on. I don't see it being like one of those coaches, middle of the season, we go on like a 12-game losing streak, everybody gives up, because the players that he likes don't give up. They play hard, period. So that's the second thing. And the last thing I'll say is the defensive strategy on Jimmy Butler, to me, was absolutely just mind-boggling.
Even Jimmy said it. I mean, he even called out the double team on him.
Jimmy Butler versus the Milwaukee Bucks averaged 37 points on almost 60% shooting and 44% from three. Versus the Knicks, he averaged 24 points on 43% shooting, 11% from three. He only made 1 3 out of 9 attempts in the whole series. Versus the Bucks, he had one game less than 30 points, and that was a 25-point game. Versus the Knicks, he didn't even score 30 points once. And yet, we continue to double team him at the half-court line, which actually created offense for them. Yes. And I think that strategy not only hurt us, but it hurt another player that's become a polarizing player for us, and that's Julius Randle. Because I think Julius Randle, I really looked at a lot of film, and I've noticed one thing that Spo noticed. Julius Randle, this was just a terrible matchup for him, because what they identified is Randle has a tough time processing plays in the middle of the court. It's like if you're a football player and you run and you're a cornerback and you can't diagnose or identify routes, you're not going to be successful in the NFL. Right? It's like a catcher that can't identify strengths and weaknesses, hot zones and cold zones, and can't call the game. You know, you see it with Garrett Cole, you see it around with certain pitchers, like certain catchers. If you cannot identify these things, it's not a recipe for success. Julius Randle, when you ask him to move around, to rotate, to pick up who I have to go with, because RJ picked up this guy, so now I got to identify who's my guy. When you put him in those situations, he gets lost. And then what he does is he stops, he freezes, and he gives up on the play, because he just gets lost in chaos. And that's why Spo created a lot of movement, created a lot of situations where they put Randle in pick and roll situations, and they made the Knicks rotate, because they identified that that's one weakness with this team. When you ask them to move around, they eventually are not going to make their rotations. And so Thibodeau, to me, not identifying that and not adjusting to that was a big, big negative. And that's why I have real serious questions if he's the guy for us to give us, to take us to the promised land.
I just add, and if this was ever a commercial for Tibbs to be fired, you sold me 100% on that, JD. But now, when it comes to Tibbs, I agree with everything that JD just said 100%. Right, every flaw that he pointed out with Tom Thibodeau, we all talked about the lack of in-game adjustments from Tom Thibodeau. If there's one thing that Tom Thibodeau does well, is if he pre-games that he wants to shut you down and he draws up all of his pre-gaming plans to shut you down, you're probably going to get shut down 9 times out of 10. But that allows other guys to step up, like Gabe Vincent, that allows Strus to kill us, that allows Bam Adebayo to kill us, that allows Kevin Love to kill us, right? And shout out to the vets, Kevin Love and Kyle Lowry, because they found some type of fountain of youth down there in Miami, and they're just contributing, and you're getting max effort out of them. And Eric Spoelstra and Greg Popovich, top 2 best coaches in the league. Nobody can argue against that. The way that Eric Spoelstra showed you that he is a Hall of Fame coach on that sideline in that series, that man is a Hall of Fame coach. And you just got to tip your hat to him. Will Tom Thibodeau be the guy to get us to the promised land? No, I don't think he'll be that guy to get us to the promised land, but I could see him being a Mark Jackson that gets us to where we find our Steve Kerr that gets us to the promised land, right? So I can see Tom Thibodeau as that guy that builds a foundation to get to that place when we do have to eventually switch head coaches. But at the same time, this has been the first time that after 3 seasons with a front office and a head coach, us Knicks fans, majority of us are happy and don't want to fire everybody in the room. We're not trying to fire the front office. Yes, we were just having a conversation of letting Tom Thibodeau go, but that's not the consensus for the entire fan base. So this is the first time that in many years that we could sit back and say that, cool, after 3 seasons, we're happy with the front office and with the direction this team is going.
Yeah. And so I'll just chime in with a few things. So the first is that, yes, the front office has done good things. I think the main thing is trying to figure out if relationship as opposed to the future of this team are going to be more important when it comes to Tom Thibodeau. Because if you look at it, it's one of those things that every action movie, you have the guy who's shooting the gun, takes as many shots as possible, but eventually the gun runs out of ammunition. So you have to either reload, find a new weapon, or do something, or you're stuck. Like, you're screwed if you just take that gun that ran out of ammunition and just think you're going to keep on, intimidating people. Like, you're screwed. So that's where Tom Thibodeau's at. Like, he shot everything possible that he had. Got us to where we could be successful into the playoffs. But he's proven again that he is not a playoff coach. That he's just not. Like, he's not quick enough to think on the fly. Like, if you think of it, we're talking about the Jimmy Butler situation. It's hilarious that Jimmy Butler laughs when he's asked about the double team. He was asked, hey, what do you think about the double team? Him and Kyle Lowry look at each other and they laugh and they go, double team? You mean like triple team? Like, they were making a comical joke out of the defense because it continued to happen. And so what did Jimmy say? If that's what they're going to continue to throw at me, I'm just going to move it. We have other guys that are efficient at what they do. So whether it's Tibbs or he even said, if someone else really wants to dare me to do that again in the next series, I'll move it there too. So like, he knew, and we saw it in the first game, and then we saw it in the last game. There was no changes as opposed to Spo. Spo was making changes throughout every single game to the point that in that same interview, Kyle Lowry was asked about like the success of the team. And one of the first things he had to say was, we have Spo. And he was like, coach is ready for anything and can adapt to anything. And he did. He adapted to anything and we were ready for anything. So those are the major differences there. So when it comes to Tibbs, I'm thankful for what he did. But there's this proverb that I've always loved. And it says, as a dog returns to his vomit, so a fool returns to his folly or repeats his folly. Like, I don't want that to be the Knicks. I don't want the Knicks to be like, oh, yeah, this doesn't work. Let's keep it going. Whether it's coach, whether it's a player, whether it's a front office, if we see that something is not working, it's insanity to continue to try and try and try. So I'm thankful for what Tibbs has done, but I honestly think this is it. It's one of those things that I would rather him exit before his Muhammad Ali moment, where he goes down as a coach that is like, oh, he stayed in the ring for way too long. Like, I think he's at that point. I think he needs to step out. I think we need to move on, find someone or promote someone from within, and let the team continue to go in the direction. But I'm thankful for what he did do because we did.
So
see
let me do this, Phil. Show of hands. Is Tibbs going to be fired? Does anybody want to raise their hand and think that's going to happen?
I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay, same page. All right, just making sure, because I mean, we all can, like you said, we can see the stuff. But
raise your hand if you would one. Oh, you wouldn't mind him getting fired.
Yeah.
As long as we're all on the same page when it comes to that, right? But let's switch it up just for a little bit. Just to respect everybody's time and stuff like that. And also, the Yankees are up. Aaron Judge hit a home run. There you go. This is how you know we're not live at the moment, right?
Bang.
But switching gears real quick. We gotta have the conversation about put me on your back, Julius Randle, number 30. Right. I get it. I understand. Not that many people were excited about the way he played in the postseason, especially that last game. Everybody is calling for him to get either traded or shipped away. But I'm going to start the conversation off plain and simple. Am I going out of my way just to trade Julius Randle for like whatever and just get nothing back in return that's valuable? No. No one can deny somebody who's 25-10 and probably just need a good talking to. You see what happens when he took his mental health very serious this offseason. He was able to have a phenomenal season, right? But would I go out there and entertain trades involving Julius Randle that can bring us back a superstar or that missing piece to put around Jalen Brunson? Absolutely, I'm having those conversations, and I'm calling up every other GM or every other disgruntled star that is in the league right now to try to figure out what is it going to take to bring that person to New York. I'm going to throw it over to you, JD. When it comes to Julius Randle, number 30, how are you feeling about my guy, and are you going out of your way to trade him?
I think you have to entertain a move. And I think it's also there's reasons individually for him, but there's also, I think, team reasons in terms of fit and personnel. So there's actual basketball reasons there to also want to evaluate a move. And one of those I've always thought, I wasn't not sure if him and RJ always were a fit long term. We've already seen a few years of it. I think a lot was masked this season because of Brunson. And even then you saw a lot of, from a regular season standpoint, RJ didn't have a great season. And I think you saw in the playoffs when RJ was more of a focus, how he benefits. But the problem has been between those two is how can we get both of these guys to play great at the same time in the same games in conjunction with each other, right? And that's been the challenge, is getting both of them to be in synergy and to be in rhythm with the offensive system. So there's basketball reasons there. The next thing is this market is just tough. This market requires a certain specific level of players. You mentioned in this very broadcast, I think it was in this broadcast, so I don't know if it was backstage, Hector, about Gleyber Torres and hustling. Right? You were upset that he didn't hustle, right? Like, notice how we were just freelancing, and that is the first thought that comes to mind. That's the New York mentality. Yep. Like, we quickly identify those moments, and we quickly get turned off by players that just do not bring 100% effort. And the most frustrating part with Randle when it comes to the effort department is it's simple effort plays. It's not like we're asking him to play like the junkyard dog, former Knick, right? Like where you go 1,000 miles per hour every single time. We're not asking you to do that. We're not asking you to spend all your energy on one end over the other end, but we are asking you that, when you turn the ball over and you're at half court, you're not on the other end. You are at half court. So you're within distance. And then a player behind you gets down the court before you. That's frustrating. And then when they turn the camera, you're still at half court after the play is over. That's frustrating. And people that support him, it just frustrates me that they just bypass those things. Like, it doesn't mean anything. Like, it's just, well, he gave you 25-10. And how and I like the other argument against this. How can we replace that production? Hello, sometimes you don't replace production in a player with one player. There's different ways you can replace that production. It can be with a few players. It can be with a different offensive system. Right? Like, Mike D'Antoni offensive teams has one player that usually goes off statistically, and everybody is within rhythm. So we don't need to technically bring a 25-10 player to prove that we can't replace his production. It could be done in a different way. Now, it has to be thought out, and it has to be a game plan, right? But, there was a reason why the Nets lost superstars, and still why everybody thought they were going to fall out the play-in and go as far as maybe even being a lottery team. They actually were pretty good until the playoffs, where it proved they're, not having a star hurts. But how did they replace that? They got a bunch of wings, and they played a different style of basketball where they featured Mikal Bridges and shot a lot of threes. Notice how that was the adjustment to replace production that was lost in Kyrie and KD. So these arguments to me are not valid enough for you not to move on from a player if you feel is the best way to go. And here's the most important reason why. Decisions that are being made in the NBA, quite frankly, are made based on the playoff performances. Otherwise, the head coaches that were fired, they would still be coaching for those teams. Otherwise, we're not having questions about will the Sixers break up Joel Embiid and James Harden, right? Like notice we have these discussions after the playoffs, not after seasons, because at the end of the day, organizations make their decisions based on what happens in the postseason.
Oh, I think your mic cut out, JD.
Yeah, I think I muted it.
Yeah, you good right now.
Yeah, just the wire.
You was dropping that fuego, bro. That's what it is. Yeah.
Go ahead, bro. because think about this. Julius Randle, let's say he comes back. What's going to happen now is expectations have gone higher, and he is going to be evaluated maybe a little unfairly, but also fairly. He's going to be evaluated like a Yankee fan. I don't care what you do in the season. I can't wait for the playoffs. Talk to me in the playoffs. That's what's going to happen next year with him. He's going to be 25-10 again, and quite frankly, nobody's going to care. He's going to be 25-10 again, and quite frankly, the Knicks fan is not going to jump to go hit NBA.com to vote for him to become an all-star. No one is going to put as much stock into it until he does it in the playoffs. And that's where he's come as a player, and the front office has to decide on, was the ankle that big of a factor, or is it that this player, his style is going to be an issue in the playoffs? Because Julius Randle's style is to be a tough shot maker, and quite frankly, superstars that are tough shot makers in the regular season are also tough shot makers in the postseason. And when he goes to that style in the playoffs and he doesn't elevate, those tough shots become bad shots, as you guys saw in the playoffs. And that affects your numbers. And therefore, here we are now having a conversation about, do we have the right piece? Because remember, last year, everybody told me that it was about a point guard. Everybody told me Julius Randle needed a point guard. Everybody told me, JD, remember Carmelo Anthony, Chauncey Billups, Jason Kidd? Like, those are the years that Melo, elevated and Melo respected a guy. Julius kind of needs that type of player. We got him that type of player. He had a great regular season, but the postseason, he was terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Disappeared, so Patrick Swayze.
I would move on. But here's the next issue, guys. The market is full of players of Julius Randle's level. Zach LaVine, Julius Randle level. Karl Anthony Towns, Julius Randle level. And what do I mean by Julius Randle level? Am I talking about the player? No, I'm talking about players that have question marks on their end. So if we did a Bulls podcast, we'll be asking questions about, can you win with Zach LaVine? If we did a Minnesota Timberwolves podcast, we're asking, can Karl Anthony Towns, can he be a piece next to Anthony Edwards? You look around the NBA, Dame Lillard, age and contract. Every player that's going to be rumored to the Knicks has question marks. So if you're the Knicks front office, you have two decisions to make. Two questions to answer. Number one, is the risk worth, do I rather keep Julius and his question marks, or do I rather bring Zach LaVine with his question marks? Do I rather keep Julius, or do I bring this player? In other words, you're going to have to take a risk if you're going to do the move. You're just going to have to hope that risk pays you off the way that you were paid off by making the Jalen Brunson move. So
now, am I wrong? Am I wrong in saying that with those question marks too, JD? All those question marks probably cost more than what we have Julius for right now as well, right? So on the cost side, you're also looking at the value. Oh, wait, okay, we go get a cat who was injured more, played less games, and is going to cost us more to have. So you're not really making an improvement. You're making a lateral move, right? So to me, it's a matter of
7'3" guy. What if he blows out a knee? You're done. Miles Turner, 7 foot. And listen, these are when I bring up questions, I'm not saying that I don't want them or I wouldn't. I'm just bringing up the question marks that the front office has to ask when they have to compare it to Julius. Right? It's kind of like in a relationship. Do you want to take the risk and jump ship and be like, go to the unknown? Or do you rather say, you know what? I know what I got at the crib. I'm just going to chill for a second. Let me give it one more year. And then maybe I'll jump ship. Like that's where the Knicks are. Every player has question marks. You either take the risk and say, you know what? His negatives outweigh what I can deal with. I'd rather take the risk with this player, and maybe with Jalen Brunson, the question marks that he has on that franchise won't be the question marks that he'll face with us. The front office has to identify that player. It's their job to, and they cannot miss on this potential deal.
Yeah, so a few points that you said that I wanted to talk about. First, for me, with those question marks, one of the factors that matters most to me in making that change is the effort. Like, it's not so much about anything else but the effort. You know, like if he gave his all and dropped the ball in the playoffs, that's one thing. But dropping the ball in the playoffs and being able to say, yeah, but you didn't put in half the work that everybody else put into it, that's where it makes me go, this relationship isn't working. Because to your example of like, do you last another year? Well, is that person in that relationship trying to make it work? Or does it seem like they've already given up on the relationship? Because if they're not going to put in work into the relationship, why should I? So for that, then the whole 25-10 trash. Every time someone asks, hey, would you trade him? And I say, yes. They go, how are you going to replace 25-10? I'm like, is this an edit copy, edit paste, like Julius Randle stand, like reply? Like, can you just type in reply for Julius? Like, here's the thing about the 25-10 thing. Like you said, I don't care about the stat stacking. Like, there's other ways for it to come into play. If I look at the roster, RJ Barrett plays better when Julius Randle's not on the court. So if RJ's the kind of guy that we are going to continue to build with Jalen Brunson, then what does it matter if RJ's going to play better when he's not there? You look at that Cleveland series. Everybody stepped up in the absence of Julius Randle, and we fought, and we played well. So the whole 25-10 thing to me is just ridiculous because you're giving me stats of what he did in the season, not stats of what he did in the playoffs. So if you're going to tell me, oh, can you do without this? Yes, I could definitely deal without his 16 points in the playoffs. Like, I can definitely deal without that. And then the last thing, so many people, when I talk about the effort, they're like, oh, anyone can make a highlight video like they did of Julius Randle where he doesn't show effort. And I'm like, no, you can't. Like, you can't. Like, you're not going to be able to find anywhere, no matter how hard you search, for a Mobley lack of effort reel. You're not going to find a Draymond Green lack of effort reel. Like, you're just not going to kind of find those kind of players have a reel where you can create a 3-minute video of a game where they're not doing anything. So for me, I move on from Julius Randle, not because I don't appreciate what he did throughout the season. I think he's a great player, but I feel like if he goes somewhere else and he's traded into the position as a third option, he is going to thrive wherever he's at. But here, he was told he was the one. Then we brought in Brunson. Now he's the 2. He's showing that he can't really be fully reliable as a 2. So now to ask him to maybe be a 3, he's not going to do that. He already had a hard time not being the 1, even though the 1 was there all season. So I think it's going to be hard for him to actually step into the position we would need him to be to succeed. So let him thrive somewhere else because he's already in that position when he's brought there, and let us get somebody that's going to make our team better and not just his stats.
And what's also beneficial about just having a conversation when you talk about Julius Randle, and you can start thinking about the possibilities of where you could trade him to. The same point about Jalen Brunson, how I brought up Jalen Brunson's contract is very favorable. It's the same thing with Julius Randle. His contract, he doesn't have a crazy contract. He's not making $35 million a season, $40 million a season. He's making $25 million a season, right? He's not making Zach LaVine money, right? He's not making Devin Booker money, right? So his contract is not that crazy. So you'll be able to find a team or find that player that want to move or whatever the rumors have it, Karl Anthony Towns, and try to use him in a trade to bring that other player back over here. The reason why I bring up Minnesota, knowing that Minnesota does not have any of their draft picks going forward because of the Rudy Gobert trade, Minnesota getting back a player like Julius Randle so they can still be competitive, so they don't have to tank. That's a situation where you could see Julius Randle going, because it still gives Minnesota a solid return, having a guy who could give them 25 and 10, and they don't got to worry about being in the lottery when they don't have their draft picks. But I agree with the both of you guys when you talk about the possibilities of trading Julius Randle, because you don't necessarily have to replace his production, because if RJ steps up, this is all hypothetical, if we trade Julius and RJ steps up and he gives you the points that Julius Randle gave you, all you really need is somebody to replace RJ Barrett's 18 to 19 points per game.
Right, and
what sucks about go ahead, JD.
No, I was gonna say, the Quentin Grimes, we saw he got more shots, more in rhythm. How many times I got sick and tired of Quentin Grimes playing 9-minute runs and not take a shot attempt, and a lot of it was, some of it was his own self. He needs to identify when he can take the shot, but a lot of it also is the system that he was a part of. Like, it just wasn't, it wasn't designed to get him a shot. There's no play run for him. And we saw what happened when they finally did run a play for him. He had to turn around. He took a shot that he never took this season. Coming, behind his back, behind the rim, coming all the way around, and he shot that 3 air ball off that timeout. That might have been the first time all season that we actually designed a play coming off a timeout
specifically for him. Yeah,
and he responded just like a young player would, where it's like, oh, wait, you guys are running a play for me in the biggest part of the season?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I hope you know what you're doing, coach.
As nasty as that shot was, as disgusting as that shot was, I'm not going to give him all the blame for everything that you just brought up, JD.
Right. No, and I love people saying like this. I'm like, yo, bro, you got to understand basketball. Look at that shot. That's a J.R. Smith type of shot. That's these guys, a Jordan Poole, these fluid guys that can be unorthodox in the middle of the air and shoot shots with different angles. Quentin Grimes is a straight up shooter. He's not an angle shooter. He's not a bad shot shooter. He needs to be in rhythm, set directly at the rim and shoot his shot. Not come turn all the way around on the sideline and shoot a fadeaway 3. It's not going to go well if you're going to ask Quentin Grimes to do that. So, but yeah, the thing I'll say is also there's definitely a trade out there to be made. I always said this, and again, there's so always the New York sports analogies around the other sports. Is how many times do we see players go somewhere else and play better than they play here? Right. And it's because how many times we eventually see another franchise do make a move for a player that plays in this market with that very thought that, hey, Julius Randle in Indiana and Houston and whatever, he's not going to have the same microscope here. He's not going to have the same pressure. He's going to be more loose. Right. And when you think about that, there is a move out there to definitely be made. And again, this is a market now that has a bunch of players with question marks. So these other front offices have to evaluate all of that too. It's like, hey, do we invest in this guy, or do we just go with this Julius Randle guy? That the only thing that people are talking about is effort. We'll deal with that here, and the playoffs. Well, let's see if we make the playoffs, and we'll worry about that then. And that's how I look at it with Julius Randle. So, but I think body language is huge for me. And
same.
I like how we like to think. I like how we like to say that in today's generation of players, You know, people talk about how the way Tom Thibodeau manages Randle, and people say in defense of Thibodeau is it's because of, like JD, he doesn't hold him accountable. He doesn't yell at him like Spoelstra did to Jimmy. He doesn't yell at him like Greg Popovich did to Tim Duncan. And it's because Julius is a different personality, this and that. Body language, you got to lead by example. You have to lead with positivity. Well, doesn't the player hold that same responsibility with his teammates? Doesn't Julius have to exhibit the same behavior and energy to the rest of his teammates? Like how can anyone convince me? Because I play sports and I played around players and I've been in those positions in teams where I was in those leadership roles where the coach expected me to lead my teammates. And I could never have that type of body language because the next teammate would not believe or buy into what I wanted them to do. How can anyone convince me that his body language is productive, is going to help a player like Quentin Grimes who was shook at moments in this playoffs? It's going to help a struggling player like Emmanuel Quickly, who at moments was shook in the playoffs. Like, this is why you have sometimes younger players in your roster that don't perform well in big spots because their big dog, Julius, is not exhibiting confidence in you as a player. And I know I'm getting into very nuanced and strategic things, but you got to be in the locker room.
No, it's all facts.
And it's something that we've all thought about, you know, especially ever since that last game that the team played. When it comes down to it, like you said, body language is big for me, and just the lack of engagement, right? If you want to talk about the ankle was something that made it hard for him to drive to the lane or to shoot, copy. I'll entertain that conversation. But what does the ankle have to do for the lack of effort? What does the ankle have to do for you being engaged out there with your teammates? Not even telling your teammates that, hey, watch out, a pick is coming, or hey, I'm switching off my guy. Not communicating with your team offensively and defensively. And then when you get the ball, you just come dribbling down the court. You're not a point guard. I'll throw it over to Phil because I know he has a lot that he wants to get off his chest. And then Sels, if you want to bring up the build around right afterwards.
No,
yeah.
I
so real quick, but
yeah,
before you go, Phil, what sucks about me going last when we're talking about the Julius thing is I had all my notes, and after each one of y'all went, I had to cross out every. I was like, yep, touched on it. Yep, JD got that one. Okay. But it left me with two things when it comes to the trading of Julius Randle. All right. And honestly, he brings it on himself. So I'm tired of people on social media, you know, the ones that want to, the minute you hear Julius Randle's name 3 times, you show up and want to argue about it. I don't say trade Julius Randle just to say trade Julius Randle. Okay. There's a purchase Julius Randle jersey because of the season that this man had with us this year. Okay. Julius Randle invites it on himself. Okay. And I'll end it with this. Don't question me if I want a player traded when the man's answer in a press conference is maybe they want it more than we do. People may have been over that comment already. That's not one I'm going to let fly. Okay? You're in the playoffs. You've gotten every excuse thrown your way. The ankle, the family stuff, and the mentals. No, enough. Enough excuses for Julius Randle. Okay? If you're not going to elevate the core that we're trying to build on this team, there's no place for you here. If you're not going to elevate the young guys that need you to be a leader, you're not needed here. And at the end of the day, guys, I feel we're in a position right now as a team that we need to finish honing in on what our identity is. And I think the Julius Randle piece opens the door, if we do let him go, for us to truly find an identity of what we have as a team and bring in a piece that's going to be cohesive. Because I'll go back to our second unit. Until the playoffs, the best second unit in the NBA. The best spark plug we had. Those are times that Julius Randle's not on the court, and that's the team that was holding it down for us. So again, we can find the production elsewhere. Julius brought it on himself. So for the future of our team, the future of our young cores, I have to unfortunately say I'm on the get rid of Julius train. But if it's going to bring something that's worth it, and I'm not saying superstar, I'm saying pieces that are actually going to make us stronger as a team, which leads us back to our question marks. So let's segue into this one, JD. Julius is leaving or not. Who are you building around, bro? Is it the Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle kind of package? Or is it a Jalen Brunson and RJ Barrett? What's your game plan? Play GMJD for us, bro.
I'm building around Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, he's not even ready to give it to the other ones
No,
yet. He's like Jalen Brunson.
Listen, I want to say RJ too, but I'll say this. I told my friend this, who is and RJ is my favorite young Nick of the team, right? So he's my favorite young Nick, but you have to be objective and you have to understand one thing. I told him this. He is a RJ homer, like bias. He doesn't care. He's not trading RJ. He's not trading RJ. If Jordan came back and he was in his prime, he's not trading him for no. He's not doing it. He's not trading him for Victor Wembanyama. Not doing it, right? Now, with all that said, I told him, what's more important to you, winning a championship or the players? He said, winning a championship. I said, well, you can't get attached to players. You have to get attached to winning. And I'm going to say RJ and Brunson, but with RJ has to show more improvement to me next season. Like, he has to build off his very good playoff series. He has to build. He had a great now, and it's interesting because I want to see how he plays next year. Because if next year RJ has an uneven regular season again, but performs in the playoffs, then you have to wonder then, do we have one of those weird players that is just a big game player? Is just a player that just elevates in the big spots. And in the season, you have to live with the ups and downs, right? Like, is he that type of player? Because in the end, I want players that perform in the postseason. Like, that's what's going to get us to the promised land. So I'm going to say Brunson and RJ. Also, you saw when RJ was a focal point there in the playoffs after Brunson, how he was more confident, how he played better, and quite frankly, how he performed. And he had the matchups. Like, he went up against Jimmy Butler. And in the first round, don't forget, he went up against these storylines and these headlines about you're going up against the guy that they wanted to trade you for. Donovan Mitchell, he's going to send us home. This is the series, blah, blah, blah. And the Twin Towers, how are you going to, score on them? Like, he had a lot of headlines, and it took up to game 3 and going to Madison Square Garden when after that, he just went off for the rest of the series. And then going up against Jimmy Butler in a post-game press conference saying, I don't care that Jimmy's defending me. I'm going to go at anyone that defends me. I'm not thinking about who it is. I'm thinking about what I need to do to be successful. And for him to say that, and then thereafter, when Jimmy came back, because Jimmy wasn't guarding him before his injury. When Jimmy came back from the injury, Spo made an adjustment. And because RJ had played well, he said, you know what, Jimmy, we're going to put you on RJ. And we're going to force the Knicks to go elsewhere. And RJ still responded up until the last game of the series, right? So he showed me a lot there. He showed me enough to where when you look around the NBA, you can't just give up on a 22-year-old. If we're over here giving Julius Randle additional years because of this and that and the fourth, how can I not say, let me give a 22-year-old a year or two more to see if he can pop and go to the next level? Because to me, RJ's going to have to do one thing that Quickly did. Notice how quickly, forget the playoffs, but notice how quickly elevated his inside the arc game. You know why? Because he was working with Brunson and he delivered a game inside the three-point line. He was no longer just a three-point shooter and a floater master. He was shooting mid-range shots, stopping in the paint, popping in the paint. Those are things we haven't seen from RJ. And the year before last year, I talked about how Quickly was going to need to do that because he's not the most athletic point guard. And, we see sometimes he has trouble getting by certain players. How do you counter that? Well, you got to go into footwork. You got to go into a little bit of a mid-range game. Got to go in a little bit into a paint game. RJ, I don't know if RJ's ever going to be a good three-point shooter. So you're going to have to turn into a Paul Pierce, a Jimmy Butler, a Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, like these guys that have a mid-range game. I'm not talking about that level of player. I'm talking about what those players do. Carmelo, notice I'm bringing up players that were never the most athletic. Paul Pierce, Jimmy Butler, Kawhi. These are players that you look at on TV and you're like, how can they not stop these players? Like Paul Pierce ain't doing nothing crazy. He doesn't have a crossover. He's not exploding to the basket. He's doing these one-step mid-range shots. But it's because it's the same thing Jalen Brunson. These guys just know how to take care of their bodies and they know how to get to certain spots. If RJ can develop that, if he can develop any semblance of a mid-range game, he's going to take his game to the next level. And I need to give him an opportunity to do that. And the playoffs, I think, did enough for me. And I also think for the team creates better plays when RJ and Brunson are in a rhythm than if you were to tell me Julius and Brunson. Because notice, Julius and Brunson is isolation. RJ and Brunson is isolation. And then with RJ, you don't know what you're going to get. You might get an alley-oop to Mitchell Robinson. You might get a cross-court pass to the corner to Quentin Grimes. You might get a playmaking move. And you might get, an isolation play from him. But he gives you more high-potential opportunity to develop within the offense. Again, RJ can affect the rest of the team. I don't think Julius Randle does that as much. And therefore, I'd rather go with RJ and Brunson. I think it has a higher ceiling.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So the thing that you said earlier about Julius Randle is in the bubble season, everyone had the excuse. All he needs is a point guard. That's why he choked in the playoffs, because everyone was double teaming him or triple teaming him. He was the focal and only, offensive threat on the offense. Get him a point guard and Julius Randle will thrive. Well, here we go again. Second time. Now he's got who is arguably one of the best point guards in the playoffs. And yet we still saw a subpar Julius Randle. Okay. So for me, I'm going, okay. So the one excuse that we banked on keeping Julius Randle around for was that he just needed a playoff, point guard to thrive. Well, that didn't happen. So what is the excuse now? We're not going to say the ankle because, granted, Jimmy Butler was injured in the series as well. Jimmy Butler came with full effort. Jimmy Butler's not going to blame it on the ankle. So, okay, we can't use that excuse. So RJ Barrett, on the other hand, okay, everyone was saying he's only 22, he's only 22, he's only 22. Okay, if he came into the playoffs and played like complete trash and showed no effort, I would wipe my butt with the fact that he's 22 and say, I don't care. He didn't show up. He didn't play. However, what did RJ Barrett do? He said, I need to fix my shot. Something is broken. He fixed his shot, went into the playoffs, a better version of himself, a tweaked version of himself, taking full responsibility, which is huge. You don't see a lot of responsibility when it comes to Randle's post-game interviews, unfortunately. It's a lot of like, oh, got to watch the tape. We could have been better. Like no, don't put me in don't put me in a we category. Like if I'm his teammates, I'm like, don't say we. You played like trash. I played well. Don't we this. So like I saw a lot of responsibility from a young 22 RJ Barrett. I saw players around RJ Barrett play better when they were with RJ Barrett than they were with Julius Randle. So if I'm going to look at those things and say, this guy, 1 out of 2 times, because you can say the same thing about him in the bubbles, playoffs, that he didn't really show up. They both had 2 playoff contentions now together. One of them thrived this time. One of them continued not to thrive. Others thrived around the same one who thrived. Others didn't thrive around the same one who didn't thrive. So for me, I'm going to go with a 22-year-old that rose to the occasion this season and made the players around him better in the playoffs than the 28-year-old who failed to show up again in the playoffs and players played better in his absence than when he was there. So I'm going with the RJ Barrett, Jalen Brunson combo.
Yeah,
I just wish there was a magic ball, where it's like, guys, RJ Barrett is going to be playoff RJ Barrett all season long. If we could get that RJ, man, just give me Brunson and RJ, and just tell me who else you're bringing in to make our team whole. Like the kid went off, and it was great to see. But there's no world to me, guys, where if we keep Julius Randle, we're running back the exact same mistakes that we ran this season, and we're going to be in the same situation next playoffs and having the same conversations. So, yeah, I've got to roll with RJ. I mean, I can't put stock in Julius. I already spent Phil's money on a jersey, man.
The honeymoon's over on RJ next year, though.
Oh,
100%.
Yep, exactly. Well, you said it best, JD, in the
in.
beginning of your take.
The money kicks in now, so people are gonna always pay attention to that New York. I never understand why people do that, but it's like, okay, whatever. But hey, the money kicks in.
But you started your answer the best way
possible. We're gonna pocket check. Yeah,
the honeymoon phase is over. Like you said, when it comes down to it, I'm in agreement with all three of you folks. When it comes to building around RJ and Jalen Brunson, that's the way you're gonna have to go. You got two guys that they attack the paint and they get to the basket. When it comes to Jalen Brunson and RJ Barrett, you need to do whatever you can to surround the both of them with shooters and sharpshooters and guys that can just close it out and just knock down an open three. As much as I love Mitchell Robinson has been a phenomenal draft pick for us. Great story, second round pick. We need to get someone who is a stretch five. That way it opens it up for Jalen Brunson and for RJ Barrett to operate. Now, I don't know who that person is going to be, whether that be Karl Anthony Towns, whoever, but we need a stretch five. It works so much better for this offense with Jalen and Julius. Go ahead, Sos.
And let me say this real quick about that last point you said, Hector.
I saw the deep breath coming. I was like, oh, he's ready.
No, real quick, I think this is important. This is the type of pressure this front office has. You just said something about whether we go this way or whether we go that way. They have to make that decision. What's the type of upgrade that we're going to make? Are we going to do it via a star level player, or are we going to do it via the pieces around? Because if they decide to do it via the pieces around, in other words, Julius is back, RJ's back, Brunson's back, like that's the core, and you decide to do it with pieces around, they better not miss. Because remember the offseason where they had when they did that with Kemba, with Evan Fournier, that did not work. That did not work, right? Yep. They try to bring Nerlens Noel back, and the offseason that they made that move, that did not work. Like they haven't been really good at that department in terms of the surrounding of they've been good. They've been very good drafting. They hit on Brunson, right? They they're not responsible for RJ, and they've elevated Randle in terms of the regular season. But those other players, other than you want to say Isaiah Hartenstein, which took a while to materialize, and even then you kind of could make an argument we don't really take advantage of his abilities. They better, if they go that route, they better hit on those role players they bring, because their report card there hasn't been too great so far.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, JD. Based on that is, I think we kind of making the decision a little easier for them with the way that our second unit played with the extra pieces we had. You guys hit the nail on the head when we brought in Hart. So look, guys, count your blessings. Come on, front office. You made moves that all hit at the same time this season. Your draft picks are hitting. Your kids are stepping up. They couldn't have made the decision any easier for you. Hey, guys, we see a world where these two guys or all three of these together, it doesn't work. It's too ISO heavy. It's too one-man show. This season, like you said, has given them so many answers. It's like, go with the right one. Don't overthink this situation. Forget your favoritisms. Find your identity and realize you don't have to go get 4 or 5 guys. You've got a core in place that is telling you, hey, it's okay to give up on one of them. And JD, you said it in the last take that you tell your boy. And Hector and I preach it all the time, like true Yankees fans. Forget the name on the freaking jersey. Focus on our team. It's the freaking Knicks. I don't care if your last name's Randall. It could be Buji Mama. I don't care. If you play like dog doo-doo, you need to go.
They're problematic with the last names, you know.
The preference is always winning with the homegrown talent. That's always the preference, of course. But man, when was the last time the Yankees won a championship, and how did we get that one?
Oh God, bro, Jesus, you're gonna make me hurt. You're gonna make me hurt. Like not too like, painful memories. Saying, I gotta process in one night, bro.
I'm just saying, like, you know, like it's not always going to be that way. But you try to do it with as much players, but the Knicks do have that. Like that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just, you know, fans get attached to certain other big name players, but this roster is full of, you know, homegrown talent. Even you know, with even end of the bench. I mean, we even have Rokas, who's he hasn't even been here yet, and we don't know if he ever will be. But you have him, Deuce, Jericho, RJ, Grimes, quickly. I mean, how many more homegrown talent players you want? It's okay to use a few of those and to upgrade the roster to get to the ultimate goal. Or if you want to be a Philadelphia 76ers and create a process and wait 10 years and not win anything, you can also do that.
Let's
blow it up. I'll pass on that one.
Guys, but before we wrap it up, man, JD, we want to make sure to tell you, man, you know, all three of us, everything you've done this season, bro, you killed the watch-alongs, the amount of time and hours and knowledge that you shared with everybody, bro. Like, salute. Like, seriously, everything you did this season was phenomenal. And then I know you want to hide in a cave right now, and you still made time to come hang out with us tonight and get this episode, man. But we really do appreciate you taking time to hang out with us and everything you do for the community, bro. Like 100%.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you guys bringing me on. It was long overdue because actually it was supposed to happen earlier while things were going well. Man, but you know, the scheduling conflicts and stuff, and of course now that we finally got it going, it was not at the most positive time, but nevertheless, it was a blast. I'm happy to have done it. I can't wait to come back and do it again because it was a great time. And yeah, thank you guys for the kind words, and shout out to you guys because you guys definitely are working hard to build the brand, are working hard to build your platform, and just keep going, man. Keep going. Because of the simple fact that you never know who's watching. I always say that you never know who's watching, and you know, just keep learning the nuances and the little things, and things will start to take care of itself. And at the end of the day, you guys are hard workers, so I'm confident, you know, you guys will continue to grow because you guys are passionate, and where passion goes, results follow. So thank you guys, and I appreciate it.
Appreciate that, brother.
Especially you, Hector. Bro. We go back. People don't know that.
Yes. A lot of people don't know, bro. But
way
back, you know, pandemic days, like I said backstage, you know, when Freezy first started his and Uncle Ron, man. And when I first started my first thing, you know, shout out to my brother, Worldwide Mayberry Lawrence and Zach. You know, we had For the Love of the Game when we first started it out, and you was constantly in the chats giving us a lot of good feedback, and I appreciate you, bro. Like you said, it's been a minute, bro. Been what, 3 years and stuff, and you put the work in, and your story has inspired us all, JD. I want to say that from the bottom of my heart, my guy. You started off as someone, like you said, this is not something that you wanted to get into. You know, it just fell into your lap. You got the ball and you ran with it. And that's what you do. When you get certain opportunities, you take the ball and you run with it. And you kept running, just like that scene from Waterboy when he just keeps on running past the stadium and everything.
Yeah, that's why I say you never know who's watching. That's how CP found me. You know, just one day I was just clicking on YouTube, and was like, it's like you said, it was the season where everybody was home, and I say, you know what? Let me look at Knicks content, because I'm a type of person, I always used to read the newspapers, and I always have my own thoughts and share them with my friends. I was never into social media or into the camera or videos, and that's how it started. I clicked on Knicks. I saw a live thing under a video, and I'm like, I clicked on it, and it was Freezy's channel, and then I see a live panel of people jumping in, and as I'm watching it, I'm seeing a link posted on the chat, and I guess I'm like, oh, so I guess anybody that wants to come in and talk Knicks can do that. And then it was like 2 days after that, I decided to jump on. I didn't even have no camera, so when I got on, it was just me talking. And then from there, it turned out to be like, you know what, I want to talk more Knicks. And from there, I met Sports Vibes TV, and Sports Vibes
shout
TV
out to
brought me
Keith.
into
Yes.
Sports Vibes TV brought me into his channel from seeing me there. I did some videos with him there, and from there, I went with Sim at MBK. Sim and I had some conversations behind the scenes. Some things didn't materialize, but I was on MBK for a few episodes. Some people don't know that. From there, George at Into the Knicksverse saw me.
Yes, Theo George.
And then George said, "Hey, do you want to do some videos with me?" And I did that. And from there is where CP found me and then reached out. And from there, I've just been on Knicks Fan TV.
That's what's up, bro.
So that's my story.
Yeah, that's what's up.
That's a dope journey,
fire.
bro.
That's fire, bro. But yeah,
Well, guys, we'll wrap it up on this note right here. Heck, for everybody in the chat, appreciate you guys riding with us as usual. We got one more Knicks Morning Brew for you after this one. We got a special edition episode this Friday. We're doing it as our own season 1 recapping the Knicks season, and of course recapping the Morning Brew season. We got a lineup, people. Let me pull it up so everybody can see. We got Queen Steph, we got Lee Escobedo, we got it's your boy JD, Alex Stradado's coming, and we got Danny Spider. Don't you wish you came to the Knicks? Rant joining the panel, guys. It's gonna be banging this Friday. And in all seriousness, man, appreciate everybody in the chat. Appreciate everybody for riding us. JD, thank you again, my guy. And I guess on that note, what do I do? Just hit the usual button?
We just hit the usual button. Let's hit the usual
right.
button.
Deuces.
Peace.